Megalodon, a genus of shark known by many even outside of paleontology circles, is certainly a very impressive animal and remains firmly entrenched as one of the most well-known extinct animals, at least publicly. Scientifically speaking though, Megalodon, in having a cartilaginous skeleton like other sharks, has meant that over the years, piecing together and estimating both their appearance, size, and adaptations has proved rather difficult to sort out. This has meant that over the years, falsehoods and misconceptions about them have popped up here and there, that alongside unusual ideas about them still living today, muddy the waters, so to speak, on how we understand them. However, more recently, increased research into them and their habits, ecology, proportions, and also their size, has made an ever clearer picture of how they appeared and acted in life than ever before, with some very interesting results to be noted. To begin, and to address one of the more frequently asked questions, just how big do these sharks actually get? It's, well, quite a varied and often heated discussion surrounding them, with there having been varying estimates based on many different models and comparisons with other extinct and also living sharks. To advance forwards in understanding their overall size, it is most important first and foremost to determine their closest relatives, as this allows us to better understand their proportions and in turn, their overall shape and body mass. Megalodon belong to a group of sharks known as the otodontids or megatooth sharks, living from around 23 to 2.6 million years ago, from the early Miocene through to the Pliocene, which have been found to group under the order of lamniforms, otherwise known as the mackerel sharks. Getting into further specifics, they clade most closely out of all the living sharks with the lamnids, sharks like the great white and mako, as well as the salmon and porbeagle sharks. This relationship has recently led to the two families being included in a sister group relationship under the superfamily of Lamnoidea, something which is supported by their similarities of regional endothermy, rostral cartilage anatomy, as well as their tooth morphology. Alongside exceptionally well-preserved remains found of their likely ancestor, Creta lamna, which bears strong similarities to salmon and porbeagle sharks in proportion, the latter being the most basal lamnids, and the one that likely gives us the best glimpse into what basal ontodontids appeared like. It therefore makes it much easier to extrapolate in reconstructing Megalodon's life appearance. Plotting out their proportions is in many ways easier to manage and discuss than many dinosaurs, since sharks have very rigid and fixed body plans in comparison, with newborn and juvenile sharks beginning and continuing to grow with the same proportions as their eventual adult and mature form. This therefore makes it a lot easier to take from the growth curves of modern sharks to project them onto extinct taxa like Megalodon, something which is helped by the existence of more complete fossils from their relatives, as well as from animals both more basal and derived than them to look to. A recent study in 2020 set out to determine their body dimensions through comparisons with a select grouping of modern analogues, also factoring in the variability of body dimension averages. Of the 15 living lamniforms, the group of sharks closest to Megalodon, 5 were assessed as being the closest to them based on their dental, ecological, and physiological similarities. These sharks were determined to be the short fin and long fin mako sharks, alongside the salmon and porbeagle sharks, alongside the great whites, something which is very clear given their previously established close relationship. Using computer modelling and assessing their tooth measurements and known vertebrae to living sharks and how they match up, the resulting calculations from the study found an average total length of about 16 metres, which was markedly larger than previous estimates for the specimen used, being IRSNB 9893, which is considered as a general average size for an adult Megalodon, also having a weight of around 61.5 tonnes. This would make them confidently the largest shark known, either alive or extinct, and gives them some very interesting proportions. A Megalodon of the size discussed would have had a head about 4.5 metres long and a dorsal fin around 1.6 metres tall, meaning a good chunk of us wouldn't even be as tall as this, even when standing on their back. And this isn't even as big as they could have got, as other estimates for larger individuals have also been provided in recent years. Isolated vertebrae and teeth from other individuals paint a picture of extremely large animals, among the largest in fact that the oceans have ever seen. One such Megalodon specimen has been estimated at about 20 metres in length, with an extrapolated weight anywhere from 103 to 122 tonnes, comparable to average blue whales in mass in some parts of the world. The upper limit sharks can reach, as seen from time to time in whale sharks, makos and great whites to provide examples, can be a good deal bigger than what is often on record, and that certainly could have applied to Megalodon as well. In terms of their movement and speed, despite being as large as they were just talked about, they were very impressive and fast swimmers, being a good deal faster than what was previously considered. Given their close relation to the lamniforms, animals that are regionally endothermic, able to create and regulate their own heat, it therefore tracks that Megalodon, on the basis of geographical data on where they lived and the water temperatures present, were likely the same, keeping certain areas of their body at higher temperatures than the surrounding water by means of a vascular countercurrent heat exchange system that will specialise thermogenic organs. This adaptation would have enabled megalodons to be quite the active animals, with them being estimated to have an estimated cruising speed of about 1.3 to 1.4 meters per second, faster than all the extant species assessed in the study where they were analysed. Their burst speeds, whereby the sharks, like their living relatives, accelerate to catch their prey off guard in an ambush, was also very impressive, able to charge forward at a speed of an estimated 10 meters per second, which, to put it in perspective, sailfish at their maximum speeds are estimated at about 8.3, and barracuda, also renowned for their speeds, being estimated at 6.2. Their ability to cruise at such speeds would have enabled them to traverse great distances, which would have increased their ability to encounter prey, which, given that modern great whites can travel as far as 11,000 kilometers across oceans, Megalodon would have certainly been able to do the same. This ability to move between feeding sites also leads them to having an interesting, but often underappreciated and little known ecological role, as today, large and highly mobile animals have the effect to drive nutrient movements across marine regions, having a key role in global nutrient transfer in the oceans. Their extinction, therefore, not only affected the cetacean populations that lived alongside them, freeing them up from such a large predatory pressure, but also greatly affected food webs, nutrient transport, as mentioned earlier, which therefore impacted ocean productivity and ecosystem stability along with it. Megalodon's role in the Miocene through Pliocene food webs is certainly very impressive as well, as it seems they occupied a trophic niche not currently filled by any ocean-going animal alive today, being a super predator that would regularly prey on animals as large as modern apex predators, which would have allowed them to both minimise competition as well as being able to acquire substantial amounts of energy to fuel their long migrations. Megalodon jaws were so large that based on their size, a 16-metre individual can eat an orca, or at least an animal as big as one, in just 5 bites, which would have certainly been a lower number if this was a 20-metre Megalodon. Such pressure on these otherwise apex predators led to an interesting dynamic forming between the predatory whales that lived alongside Megalodon and their lifespans, which correlated with said pressure in an interesting way. Teeth from Physeteroids, the group which includes living sperm whales, was much more diverse back during when Megalodon was alive, and were also very formidable predators in their own right, many of them orca-sized and having a full set of impressive dentition, enabling them to go after many coastal and ocean-going animals, something confirmed by the wear facets on their teeth. Because their teeth grew continuously over the course of their life and weren't replaced, counting the rates of their growth through looking over lower groups can be used to determine their age and when they died. Many of the largest teeth revealed something peculiar, that these animals rarely exceeded 20 years of age, which is significantly shorter than the typical 65 plus years seen in their modern relatives, as well as amongst other dolphins and whales, more comparable to belugas than any other group. They also grew very rapidly, which is in stark contrast to many cetaceans, which appears to reflect the environmental conditions and pressures under which they were under. Miocene through Pliocene oceans were especially productive, and with this came more resources for larger predators like Megalodon to exploit, which on a food web scale placed more pressure on other predators to adapt, with said whales having to quickly mature and grow to breed to keep up their populations when animals like Megalodon were around to prey on them, as the more slower-paced breeding and growth of other cetaceans would not have been able to suffice with such predation pressures placed upon them, which explains how after Megalodon's extinction, the trend towards slower life histories became more apparent thereafter. The growth pattern seen in these raptorial sperm whales is also seen to an extent in Megalodon, whereby they have a growth rate nearly 2 times that of great whites, but having a delayed sexual maturity that showed that they had a slowing of their somatic growth by around 25 years of age. Based on known neonates or newborn fossils from them, Megalodon were born already large, being about 2 meters long and already 120 kilograms in weight, something seen today in their living relatives, which give birth to live young, with them able to reach ages anywhere from 88 to 100 years based on analysis of their vertebrae and the fossilized layers of bone tissue added year upon year. This growth rate of about 16 centimeters a year for at least the first 46 meant that even young Megalodon would have been quite formidable, with there even being evidence of their predation on much larger animals. A bite mark on a humpback-sized whale was determined to have come from a Megalodon of about 4 to 8 meters in size, with such predation events also being known from great whites, where they will attempt to feed on weakened or ill whales on their migrations. To sustain their massive sizes, it figures that Megalodon would have had to have eaten a huge amount of food to keep going, and that certainly appears to be the case, needing a huge, estimated 98,000 calories a day. Their ability to store the nutrients they obtain from their food was found to be quite impressive, something which is assisted by the high levels of calories in whale blubber, as it's been found that the consumption of a cetacean the size of an orca would sustain a 60-metre Megalodon for about 63 days without jeopardising population survival. Altogether though, their preference for, and also the ability to consume such large prey, would have allowed Megalodon to not only exploit less competitive niches, but also enabling transoceanic movements, having a strong effect on the trophic webs of the world's oceans. Their bite force is very impressive too, with them being so powerful and forceful that they would have been able to destroy their own teeth in the process, having a bite force of up to 180,000 newtons, or equivalent to having 18 tons of force laid on top of you all at once. Their jaw muscles alone weighed as much as an adult cow, which gave their massive and iconic jaws their power. T-Rex, for a reference, had an estimated bite force of about 35,000 newtons. Such powerful bites, if they found the target, would cripple even the very largest of animals, with them being able to take out 3 tons of flesh in a single bite when estimating from a 20-metre specimen, an attack fully capable of killing a living adult fin or blue whale of today. The scale of their jaws really are immense, enough to fit about 5 or so people in their mouth at once, which would have given them the gape to fully engulf an aforementioned T-Rex in one go, though they of course never coexisted. Their large teeth, while also being very impressive fossils, and fairly common ones at that, have also served a practical purpose throughout history, one such notable case being a tooth found in an altar being found in an ancient Mayan city, whereby the chips and worn down serrations on one side, suggesting that it was used as some form of cutting tool. It may have also been an offering to the Palanquin gods of G1, the native name being unknown, who was often depicted with fins and a single triangular tooth, likely being based off of Megalodon themselves. In finishing off this video, it's pretty clear to see that Megalodon was not just a big shark, but a very interesting animal that had enormous impacts on the ecologies of the environments they lived in, shaping the population dynamics and life histories of many of the species they lived alongside, as well as also having some unique attributes that distinguishes them from their living relatives. This is certainly not the last time we'll be talking about them and their relatives either, as topics such as their evolutionary history, competitors, and extinction are all things I want to get to at some point down the line, and to keep this video somewhat shorter, I'll be covering them later on. So, all in all, I thank you for watching this video on these animals, and that you may have learned something new. If you would like to see more from this channel, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and with that, I'll see you next time, whenever that may be.